Hello and welcome to Bangladesh Today. Our guest today is Professor Purusottam Bhattacharya, who teaches international relations at the Jadavpur University. We discuss the democracy model of Bangladesh, its similarities with the Indian model and dissimilarities with the Pakistani model. We also talk about hartal politics and more. Thank you very much for speaking with us. I'd like to begin by asking you about the democracy taking roots in Bangladesh. Has it really strengthened itself, or do you see that its umbilical cord with Pakistan is not really cut as far as its institutions are concerned? So democracy could come under threats because of this hartal politics that it's facing.
Well, you see, I mean, it's good that you have raised the issue of Pakistan. Actually, frankly speaking, I will tell you one of the reasons why Bangladesh split away from Pakistan, from West Pakistan, was because of the fact that in spite of common religion, the two wings of Pakistan were very different. They were culturally different, they were linguistically different, they were ethnically different, they were spiritually different, Actually, while Bangladesh was a part of Pakistan as East Pakistan, Bangladesh actually had a very unhappy experience, because the West Pakistani military junta particularly and the ruling junta, the ruling class as a whole, they exploited Bangladesh, East Pakistan. So this is why I think your starting point should be that culturally, politically, ethnically, linguistically, even in the terms of religious orientations, the two wings actually are very different, are very, very different indeed. So I really think that you should not bring in this comparison with Pakistan. That's point number one. Point number two is that, Bangladesh has now been a democracy, actually a continuous democracy since 1991. Actually what happened was that there was an interruption. Bangladesh was a democracy until 1981, but then from I would say from 1977 to from 1975 to 1991, there were shades of military rule in Bangladesh and so on and so forth, and so therefore, Bangladesh was not at that time fully democratic. But from 1991 onwards till today, one can say with the brief interregnum of that caretaker government, which was in power actually between 2006 and 2009, January 2009, barring that period, Bangladesh has been a democracy. And I would say that the supreme test that Bangladesh has passed so far as democracy is concerned, its democratic credentials are concerned, is the fact that during the period of 2006 to 2009, there was a fear that there might be an army takeover. Because of the disturbed conditions, the transition from the Khaleda Zia government and so on and so forth, and the elections and so on and so forth. You remember there were a lot of disturbances between 2006 and 2008, And so that Bangladesh has passed that test. So I feel that democracy now, Bangladesh is reasonably secure. Reasonably secure, I suppose, as reasonably as you can possibly predict the future. In our subject, it is very difficult to predict the future. It's not a physical science, so you can't absolutely predict the future.
But they've managed to keep their model intact. I mean, it's something which has developed. It's very dynamic democracy out there. With sometimes the army coming in, this conflict politics between hartals, it's a bubbling thing all the time.
Well,
there.
I think it's very difficult actually, to really, as I was saying, that to really pinpoint that this is typically Bangladeshi, this is typically Indian, this is typically Pakistani, this is typically Sri Lankan. I have a feeling that there is a subcontinental mode. I think in that sense, actually, the countries of the subcontinent are very similar, in spite of the fact that India...
I would think they're so dissimilar, the Pakistani model is so dissimilar from the
similar, I said to a certain extent, because after all, the fact of the matter is, the point I was really getting at was that politics here is really very hard-boiled and very bitter kind of politics that is fought, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
You know,
Personality
I mean,
based also.
personality based. That is true of India also. That is true of India also. I think, you know, you have to understand here in India
In
also.
Bengal especially.
In Bengal,
Now it's
especially
become.
Bengal,
It wasn't,
especially.
right?
No, but even in other parts of India also. I mean, look at the rivalries between Mayawati and Mulayam Singh Yadav, the rivalry between Karunanidhi and Jayalalitha, and so on and so forth. You can mention any number of names. So Indian politics, I would probably say probably is a shade more tolerant than, for instance, politics in Pakistan. Pakistan is probably the hardest of the lot, you know, I mean, in the Indian subcontinent, you know, because Pakistan has had the longest history of military rule.
That's right.
You know, in the history of the subcontinent. So this is why the Pakistani politics is very different.
So would you say that the Bangladeshi model is closer to the Indian model or to
Yes, I would say so. I would say so. I would say so because Bangladesh, you see, the point is culturally, I have a feeling, I don't know, Bangladesh probably is closer to India, at least certainly to West Bengal, I think, you know, I mean, to that extent. And Bangladesh, you have to understand that strategically Bangladesh is very much more dependent on India than Pakistan is on India, for that matter. Pakistan actually is is almost an equal of India, you know, in the sense that Pakistan has nuclear weapons and so on and so forth. You know, Bangladesh, in that sense, you know, if you look at the power quotient point of view, you know, Bangladesh in that sense actually is much weaker. You know, so this is why Bangladesh is therefore more dependent on India. I would use the word dependent within quotes.
Right, okay.
You know, strategically and otherwise. You know, I mean, if you look at the map, actually Bangladesh is surrounded by India from all sides except the south, you know, where there is the Bay of Bengal.
You know, with Pakistan it's been a conflict situation, whereas with Bangladesh it's not been a conflict situation. We've been, you know, instrumental in the formation of the country as well. So from the beginning it's not been a conflict situation with Bangladesh. So I would think that comparison would be odious between India's relation with Pakistan. And what I meant was that as a democracy model, Bangladesh has really succeeded in keeping its democracy intact. When you look at Nepal, it's still not been able to form its constitution. That's right. And Pakistan, you know, is on the brink all the time. It's in turmoil. It's in turmoil all the time. It's never been able to get rid of terrorism from its soil, and it's been seen as something which is breeding terrorism. Whereas Bangladesh, Sheikh Hasina has been able to crack down on even the terror aspect in her country, you know.
I think the taste of this will be whether there is continuity if there is a change of regime in Bangladesh, you know, by the end of this year. You know, Bangladesh is scheduled to go to the polls in December 2013. You know, and Bangladeshi politics, particularly since 1991, as it has been, there has been a sort of tweedledum, tweedledee kind
between
of
these two ladies.
mode, actually. You know, I mean, so one would say that, you know, if that pattern continues, then it is the turn of Khaleda Zia now to come to power. You know, I mean,
and there's no -2 formula can never work, right?
Yeah, that's right. You know, I mean, so I mean, it remains to be seen. You know, whether, for instance, you know, I mean, the crackdown that Sheikh Hasina has launched on the Indian insurgents hiding in Bangladesh, for instance, continues under Khaleda Zia. Because when Khaleda Zia was in power between 2001 and 2006, India kept continuously complaining, actually, to her government also about these insurgents. For instance, Anup Chetia has been there for goodness knows how long, actually. I mean, I forget the exact number of years, but he has been there for a very long time.
Yeah, and now we've signed this extradition treaty. Hopefully, we should be able to, get hold
Actually,
of.
Bangladesh is also hoping to get some of their criminals. You know, I mean, their hands on some of their criminals, actually. You know, for instance, I mean, there are certain other Bangladeshi groups and, I mean, criminals, for instance, which I can probably look at and probably let you know. I mean, Bangladesh feels, you know, that it can also probably get their hands on some of the criminals that are hiding here, you know, like one Subrato Bain, actually, who is in West Bengal, then another Bangladeshi criminal, actually, who has been caught in Amritsar, and so on and so forth. So there is an expectation from Bangladesh side that it will not be a one-way street, that, you know, while Indian criminals are handed over to India. You know, Bangladeshi criminals also will be who are hiding. In fact, they suspect that some of the killers of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman are also hiding in India.
Yeah.
You know, of course, India has not been able to find out, you know, where they are, who they are, and so on and so forth. You know, but then I think, you know, one Bangladesh is hoping that there will be cooperation on that. But who knows, if there is a change of government and Khaleda Zia comes back to power, I think the picture might change altogether.
Initially, when we started speaking, we talked about the Hartal politics of this region. You know, it affects your state in West Bengal, it affects Bangladesh a lot. Is it something that is intrinsic to this region, or you know, can it get out of it, or is it something that, you know?
Well, I mean, I would not go to that extent to say that it is endemically Bengali, and that it only happens in West Bengal and Bangladesh. You know, I mean, I think the Hartal politics is there actually in other states also. I think, you know, you have to look at how many times actually it happens in Kerala or in Tamil Nadu for that matter, or in Uttar Pradesh and so on and so forth. You know, probably, I think, you know, some of the Indian states which are reasonably immune from it probably would be Maharashtra, Gujarat. I would not even say even Karnataka, for instance. Karnataka actually, sometimes there are, you know, these language issue actually, you know, I mean, that crops up its head.
So language is another thing which is again something which is so sensitive in Bangladesh. I mean,
yes,
if you know, their liberation struggle began with the Bhasha Andolan. Now, that is another thing. One is language and one is the Hartal politics.
Yeah, that's right.
It's very typical of Bangladesh, very typical of your state, isn't it?
Well, again, I would say that, you know, you can only go so far and no farther. You know, because after all, don't forget that West Bengal is a part of India. West Bengal actually, and Bangladesh actually is an independent state, you know. So, actually the Bangladeshis themselves actually mind very much, you know, I mean, when this comparison is drawn. You know, between Bangladesh and West Bengal.
Culturally, you are so similar.
No, culturally that is true. That is very true. I think, you know, but then the point is Bangladesh always likes to look at India as a whole. You know, in spite of the fact that there is so much culturally common actually between West Bengal and Bangladesh and so on and so forth. After all, it is part of United Bengal actually. You know, and both the units, entities were part of United Bengal actually during the British period. You know, and so there is a lot of memories.
No,
and,
I understand that, you know, I'm not saying that they're parochial or anything like that. But what I mean to say is that Bangladeshi politics is now stuck in this Hartal politics, where it's unable to separate it out, even though Sheikh Hasina is cracking down on it. But Khaleda Zia and the Jamaat, their Awami League and Jamaat are out on the streets. And with elections round the corner, you know, it's very difficult for...
Well, you are absolutely sure. Actually, you know, in order to understand this, you have to understand this bitter divide between the two Begums. You know, that is Sheikh Hasina on the one hand and Begum Khaleda Zia on the other. You know, I mean, the fact is that this has been continuing since 1991.
Right.
You know, I mean, this is 1991 means you are talking about 22 years. 22 years of actually of bitter divide between the two sides, and the two ladies actually, they intensely dislike each other. You know, I mean, actually they are, I mean, I should be very vitriolic. I should be careful about commenting on that. But then the point is, the fact of the matter is that their personal rivalry actually has gone to the extent whereby actually their followers also, you know, I mean, fall victims to this kind of divisive mindset, you know, and that actually creates all the turmoil that that has taken place, you know. But I am cautiously optimistic that, you know, I mean, that what happened was that the Bangladeshi army in recent times has played a fairly constructive role, you know, I mean, in sustaining democracies, democracy. So I have a feeling that, you know, I mean, that things will really, when the elections are called, you know, I mean, there will be proper arrangements made for a free and fair election and so on and so forth. And
so you're hopeful that
I'm hopeful that you know, the army, if necessary, I would underline the word if necessary, the army would in fact play probably a positive role actually in ensuring that things are quiet and things are
successful
elections are held, and successful means free and fair elections are held. Because what happens is that whenever Bangladesh elections are held, international supervisory bodies actually also come and observe as observers. For instance, the European Union actually they make it a practice. They don't come to observe Indian elections, because Indian elections are generally known to be free and fair. Right. And they are being held for such a long time actually.
Indians go as observers.
Yeah, that's right. Indians go as observers. So this is why I have a feeling that with the international community watching, these days I think you have to understand that because of globalization and because of the interconnectedness, through internet and satellite television and so on and so forth, it is very difficult to keep actually things confined to one particular area alone. It will be public, internationally public for that matter. So, when elections are held in the subcontinent, whether it is in India, whether it is in Bangladesh, whether it is in Sri Lanka or in Nepal or in Pakistan, all the respective countries actually are conscious of the fact that the international community is watching. That actually has a sobering effect. I think that point has to be borne in mind. So, I am cautiously optimistic that in spite of all this Hartal politics and the turmoil that you are talking about, I think this is endemic of this region, let's put it this way. Probably, as I said, I repeat, that probably in India we have become a little more tolerant, but think of Indian politics in the 1960s.
Yes, it was
it was so divisive. Think of Indian politics in the 1970s. We had the emergency during 75 to 77. Yes. So, you draw lessons, you learn lessons. Yes. Actually, one of the reasons why
Indian of a democracy, I guess, is where, this kind of turmoil exists and some kind of a balance comes in after a while. So, yes. I guess, Bangladesh is a young country. It will.
Yes, very much so. Very much so. Bangladesh originated only in 1971. We are also a young country, which the Prime Minister referred to only yesterday during one of the programs that he was addressing. Yes. So both India and Bangladesh are young countries actually, and we have a long way to go.
It's an incubatory stage, their democracy, I would think.
Yes, I would guess so. I would very much guess so. But as I said, I'm again repeating that I am reasonably optimistic that democracy has continued in Bangladesh since 1991. The army has, and of course the crucial test was between 2006 and 2009, when there was a real fear of an army takeover. But fortunately that has not happened. So I'm confident that free and fair elections will be held. Only thing actually from India's point of view, actually, while I think, India, it is not India's business to have a friendly government, in Bangladesh. It is for the Bangladeshi people to decide, who will be their government, and it would be actually, in other words, Indo-Bangladeshi relation should be bipartisan. Right. That in other words, irrespective of whichever party is in power in Bangladesh or in India for that matter, objective conditions and objective factors should determine the relationship. Not, who is in power. Actually, actually one of the reasons why Bangladeshi people actually resent the fact that, Sheikh Hasina and the Awami League is perceived as a pro-Indian and so on and so forth. Actually this doesn't go down very well actually with the Bangladeshi public, with the Bangladeshi people as a whole. They are a proud people and sovereign people actually, so they have every right actually to feel respected and well regarded.
Thank you very much for speaking with us.
It has been my pleasure.